with my feathered wings.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Camino Cafe podcast. I am Lee Brennan, your host, and I'm so glad that you are here joining us today for this new episode. So for today's interview, I was so excited that Beebe Bahrami decided to come back to the Camino Cafe podcast and talk to us about her new book. It's called The Way of the Wild Goose. And let me tell you, I enjoyed this book so much. This book inspired me to want to get back out on the Camino Frances, but to walk it as slowly as I can because I want to see all the things that Beebe's all the time talking about. Beebe is such an inspiration to me as she is to many of you out there. She's a cultural anthropologist. She's a writer. She's written several books. Her guidebook is amazing for the Camino. And this new book, it's so great. I just can't wait for you to hear this interview. And I hope if you enjoy it, you will make some comments, give us a thumbs up, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. So thanks for being here. I hope to see you in Santiago soon. I am thrilled, Beebe, to have you back here at the Camino Cafe. It's been, I think, a couple of years, and I think back then we were just doing the happy hours. And so I'm thrilled to have you here so we can talk in depth about all the Camino stuff. And so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and to get to talk with you again.
Well, you are headed to Spain soon, and you'll be doing a retreat at Flores del Camino, which is just right outside Astorga. And that's coming up very soon in June. And I think there's still a chance people could jump in, maybe one more person or so. So just kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to describe what you're going to be doing there and talk a little bit about the retreat.
Thank you. I'm really excited about what we're doing. It's a co-taught retreat called Journeys at the Threshold, June 5th to 12th. And it's a retreat we hope to offer every year. And it is about, I'll be offering the creative writing element, and Bachem Bertrand will be bringing in the sacred art and geometry element. And it's really about there at the threshold in the right before the mountains of Leon, as you just finished the Meseta and you're about to enter the mountains again. That's the threshold, but the retreat center is also picked for being at that powerful threshold on the Camino, and to explore the stories that you have within you and the stories that you might be hearing from the Camino as you sit and write, as well as the sacred geometry that Bachem Bertrand and sacred art that they'll be teaching is a huge piece of that. But it's really a journey. It's a pilgrimage in its own right in that week. And it's really for anyone who wants to explore their own creativity and the stories within them in word and in image. And we won't just be there in Castillo de los Polvazares, the village just outside of Astorga, just west of Astorga. We'll also be visiting other sacred sites around, like petroglyphs, the ancient petroglyphs, and some ancient churches. So I think it's going to be a pretty phenomenal week. And we have some lovely participants already signed up. And we do have a couple spots left. So if anyone's called to join us, Castillo de los Polvazares, Flores del Camino, check out the retreats. And there are many other retreats. Bachem Bertrand are amazing.
Yeah, that's all I hear are great things about them. And I was speaking to someone that's going to be participating in the retreat, and they're super excited about it. And I'm quite envious. I would love to be there. That sounds amazing. So I just finished reading your newest book, and thank you for forwarding me a copy so that I could read it. And Beebe, I just couldn't put it down. Partway through, I messaged you and said, this book is making me want to go out and immediately walk. And I just recently went to many of the places that you talk about. And then there were some that I didn't even know about or missed. And so I just can't say enough about this book. I mean,
thank you.
The Moon Guide that you wrote is my favorite guidebook. I tried to get my backpack down as light as I could this last time, and I literally had to be on the path and bring this to me. So
that's great.
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to take this one too, but I'll have that one on Kindle, so that'll work out. So
both available on Kindle.
Yeah, so The Way of the Wild Goose, 3 pilgrimages following geese, stars, and hunches on the Camino de Santiago in France and Spain. A
Yeah.
great book. It's your 7th one. What did it feel like for you to put this particular book out into the world?
Oh my God, huge, because it's really complicated material. As you mentioned, you don't pick this stuff up on just one pilgrimage. It's like you have to keep going back again and again. And I did. And then I really dedicated 3 pilgrimages to what is going on with this thing that keeps coming up, the goose, the goose, the goose. You're like, what does the goose have to do with the Camino de Santiago? And it was really the pandemic, courtesy of the pandemic, that gave me, it canceled everything, and I suddenly wasn't able to, go and do the research and writing that I normally do in Spain and France. And it canceled all other writing projects that were happening because I'm a travel writer. So I was at home and I had a year and a half to just sort of take up all these notebooks that I had been just jotting this stuff down, from looking at archaeological reports to visiting all these sites on the Camino and talking to pilgrims, talking to locals about this goose thing that kept coming up, and then diving into European folklore. And there are a lot of goose stories. Just think of Mother Goose. Mother Goose is actually related to this particular goose on the Camino as well. And she's a survivor in a sense. She really is a survivor of the earlier goose goddesses that existed in native European lore and belief and practice. And so I was just taking all of this, just going, oh my God, this is so much complicated material. And is anyone even going to believe me when I start saying there's this goose on the Camino and she's a guide and guardian and she's the old European goddess? It's like, I don't know, but I have to piece it together. And as I did, it just started falling into place. And it felt as if it was, the goose herself was saying, you need to write this. This is really important that you get this down and you get this all in one place and show the continuity of this lore and this experience. So when it came together, I just felt like I really felt like I had accomplished something that was almost impossible, but the pandemic gave me the time and space to really focus on it. And then I felt like it was such a grace and blessing that I got to do it. I was so grateful I got to do it, because I was almost afraid, like, oh, what if I don't have a chance to do this or I don't do it right? But it just fell into place. I really felt like when you're on the Camino, you're guided. And the pieces just kept falling into place, in part because I finally had the time to really look at everything.
Wow.
And work with it.
Well, you talk so much in this book about, I thought it was very vulnerable of you to be talking about your kind of some of those earlier insecurities about becoming a full-time writer. And it was such a joy to be reading these pages, knowing, well, this is her 7th book, so she did it.
I'm glad to hear that. It was a joy to read.
A catharsis for you to be writing this when you were kind of struggling with this during those pilgrimages, thinking about becoming a full-time writer, and those feelings of imposter syndrome that sneak in and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was the reason that's such a part of this story is because it was in puzzling through this whole goose mystery that I also, really, to back up for a second, I really first started taking it seriously when I kept meeting pilgrims, especially from Spain and France, who were on the Camino and saying that they were walking this initiatory, esoteric, spiritual journey. And that one of the things they needed to do was look for the signs. And I was like, what do you mean by the signs? And they're like, well, one of the big signs is the goose footprint, that 3-prong goose footprint that we all see, when we watch birds walk around in the sand or on the dirt. And I first thought, what, what are they talking about? But then the more I started realizing they really are talking about something, and it's not just this made up modern journey. It actually has something to do with older vestiges and roots of European spiritual lore and folklore, that I started looking at it from a surface intellectual level, just to see what it was about. But the more and more I looked at it, the more it started pulling me in And I realized I was becoming one of those spiritual initiates, who is walking this path, looking for signs, dealing with the ordeals that come up, because initiation really is about meeting challenges, and hopefully you're successful, so you keep moving forward. And then that's when I realized, oh, it's pulling up my own issues. And so I'm on this not just outer journey anymore, but an inner journey. And the road is making the two of them meet. That goose footprint on the road was making them meet. So that's why that was an organic part of this story, and how I started understanding, oh, this is a real process, and it will ignite this path in all of us if we just start saying, I think I'm going to start walking and look for the signs and see what comes up, what they mean, and how I respond to them.
Let's take a look at the cover, because I think the cover is beautiful, Beebe. And I just wonder if you could talk about the design process of that, how you came up with this.
Thank you. I love this. It was so fun to work with my publisher, Monkfish Book Publishing, who picked up the book, because at the very top of the arch, if you look, you'll see that's a photo I took in a little church in southwestern France called the Church of Morlas. It's the Church of Saint Foy in Morlas, Morlaas, on the Arles route, the route that goes through Toulouse and then towards the Pyrenees. And if you look really, really closely, you'll see there are ducks on the inner arch. Well, and that was the moment that this whole journey pivoted. The first pilgrimage in the book is the pilgrimage I took on the Arles route. And when I got to, and I was looking for goose signs, and that part of southwestern France is like core goose and duck country. And for people, when they read the book, they'll see why ducks and geese are held together. They are both the symbol of this quest and the signs of their footprints. And this arch has 26 ducks in it. So, and if any listeners who know about the game of the goose, there are 13 geese. And so you have 13 going up one way and 13 ducks going up the other. In the very, very middle, right there, they're kissing. So the group of 13, the leaders at each end, they come and they kiss with their beaks. So there's a lot of speculation. What does that mean? And medieval historians and abbey priests, they've all been pondering, why did the stonemasons in the 12th century engrave 26 ducks, 13 pairs, 2 pairs of 13. And there's all these theories. One is that they're pilgrims, a jolly group of pilgrims. Maybe one going to Santiago, one coming back, maybe them traveling together and, doing what sometimes pilgrims do, being very pilgrimy in all the ways. But others were saying that it's actually a reminder that we are on a spiritual journey, and we're this migratory creature stepping into the unknown, trusting that, as I love, Aldo Leopold wrote in Sand Country Almanac, that spring is really truly announced by the flight of geese, because unlike any other bird, they commit to it. They start migrating, and if they got it wrong, they're too bad. They're stuck in the cold. Whereas a red cardinal can start singing at spring and then suddenly say, "Oh, it's so cold," and they go back into retreat. Whereas geese, they're already 200 miles away from home. They're committed, so they're like pilgrims. We've stepped into the unknown, and we're taking this chance, and we're not going back, until we get to our Santiago. So I forgot the question though. Now I've been going
we were just talking about the cover and the design, and of course you got the game of the goose on there, so we'll talk a lot more about that, but the game itself is so beautiful.
So quickly, then it was the art designer at Monkfish Book Publishing who said, he really liked that arch, and that was essential part of the design. But then they started thinking about their team. Let's find a game of the goose to fit inside the arch. And they looked and looked, and there are all kinds of game of the goose designs. But this one is a very modern rendering by a modern artist who it just nailed it. That sense of, it's an old game, but it has this modern twist that we pilgrims are still on this spiral path, this spiritual journey, and that is a metaphor for life, and the game itself is a metaphor for the Camino, which is a metaphor for life. So that's the way it all came together. But I just love the way the publisher created that whole mix of the cover.
It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And the fact now I like it even more knowing that your photo, right? That's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I've had the pleasure of being able to read some of the books. I wonder, you and I talked beforehand, if you would read a passage. So let's have you do that so that our listeners and viewers can just hear a little bit of the book if they haven't had a chance yet to read it.
Thanks, Lee. I thought I would just start at the very beginning.
Excellent. They'll be hooked like me.
A late October dawn broke soft and low, slowly stretching its rose and purple fingers across the dark horizon as I strode west out of Pamplona. My breath misted in the chilly morning air. A primal sense of freedom pulsed through my limbs. The pack on my back held everything that I needed for several weeks of walking. No one else was on the trail. A blizzard in the Pyrenees had undone my plans to begin this journey on the French side of the mountains in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, a popular starting point for the most historic pilgrim trail of the Camino de Santiago, the Way of St. James, known as the Camino Frances, the French way. But here, in the bowl of the pass on the other side, where the mountains give way to the hills and plains of northern Spain, there was no snow, only arid, tawny-colored wheat fields. The wheat had recently been harvested, leaving behind stubbled shafts that looked like a giant crew cut on the rolling hills. All I had to do was follow the sun's path throughout the day as it rose behind me in the east, arched overhead by midday, then descended ahead of me in the west by late afternoon, marking my stopping place for the night. Each day was an unknown, but held the certainty that each one would end a little farther west. If I followed the sun and the signs, I reasoned, I'd be fine. I moved like the ancient nomads, the way our species journeyed since the beginning, at the pace of feet. I heard the rhythmic sound of dry earth and pea-sized pebbles crunching underfoot. I breathed in a deep lungful of that cool, dewy air. I felt the weight of my pack, at first comforting, but gradually growing irritating. In truth, it held more than I needed, bearing extra weight from a research project requiring several weeks of backpacking across Spain, including notebooks, extra clothes for interviews and archival visits, heavy glossy pamphlets from tourist offices across Spain, and more socks than necessary. Though, according to one school of thought, you can never have too many socks. But the heaviest item in my pack was a tight and dense bundle of fear that had made me pack things I might need just in case. I vowed that night to shed some of its weight, send home the printed materials, give away extra clothing, and most importantly, release the fear bundle into the ether with no return address. Resolved, I shouldered the self-inflicted burden more lightly and felt another surge of electricity rush through me, the intoxicating liberation of the open road.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful opening. I mean, it just pulled me right into the story, right? It's just so beautifully said.
Thank you. Oh, anyone who's started that trail knows that feeling. So,
right.
Thank
and
you.
I wanted to kind of go back a little bit. So I believe, if I have it correctly, that you first heard about the Camino in school while you were in Madrid at university. And then you take this train ride and you wrote about this energetic feeling that you had as you entered into Navarra and Basque country. So I wondered if you could kind of touch on what that felt like. I mean, you felt this on the train, not even on foot, but even by train. So could you describe what that was like?
It's still so visceral. I feel it as you bring back that moment. It was 1986. I had studied for a semester at the University of Seville in the south. And that was the first time I heard about the Camino de Santiago. It came up in a class, the history of Spain, and one of my professors mentioned it. And as soon as he uttered Camino de Santiago, before I even knew what it was, I was just like, what is that? You know, it just called to me. And I think many of your listeners know what I'm talking about. and or we'll find out soon. And but then I that was, you know, some weeks before I had a chance to take that train ride up to visit cousins in Paris. And I just suddenly, you know, we had gone north. We had really entered into the foothills of Navarra into Basque Country, and I just started feeling this energy, and I just couldn't stop standing at the window and just looking out and going, "What is it?" But I felt like my whole destiny was bound up with that geography, and it was a completely non-rational thought, you know, because I had never been there. And I hadn't realized at the time that that's where the Camino passed through until I started piecing it together. I was like, oh, you know, this is where all the roads intersect from France and then join and cross the Pyrenees and go across northern Spain. And then I felt that same pull. I mean, that pull just kind of held from Navarra, Basque Country, and into Aquitaine. And it started to lessen by the time the train passed Bordeaux, but it was just that whole territory. And that's like the thick concentrated territory of Camino routes and intersections, and also happens to be the migratory path of geese, you know, going from Sweden to southwestern Spain on their route. So it was just all these crossroads that I later discovered, but I just vowed, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to find out what this is. And I could have never predicted that I would have turned this into the place that I write about now, and that I keep going back to and keep writing about and keep digging in. It's just endless, the layers that are there.
Yes. And so 9 years later, you, after this experience, when you first hear about it at university, you then start one of your walks. Did that same energetic feeling happen to you? Because I mean, when I'm reading your words about starting there, that's what I'm imagining, is you were feeling that same energetic feeling. How, if for folks that haven't walked, Beebe, I wonder if you could kind of talk about, well, first of all, I had no idea about the migration path. When I read that in your book, I was like, what? Like, I've heard the ley line, and we'll talk more about that in the Milky Way, but never the migration. So it was like, oh my goodness, here's one more layer of this energy. So I wonder, you know, some people will say to me, you know, what is it about this pull you have towards the Camino? You know, you could walk in your own country and do the PCT, the Appalachian Trail, and obviously
you absolutely can. Yeah, they're sacred too.
Yeah, but I don't feel that pull. I don't feel this energy that you're talking about. So I wonder, for folks that maybe haven't walked, or even as a reminder to those of us that have walked, can you talk a little bit about why, like the Milky Way, the migration, the ley line, kind of talk a little bit more about that to us?
Sure. I mean, there's so much there. I won't be able to touch on all of it, because this is, I mean, the whole earth is this gorgeous, glorious, holy, ancient geography, right? But this particular geography has a particular history with us, and it, you know, it may have been framed by the ice ages that left a lot of the northern territories of Europe under ice. So as we were nomadic hunters and gatherers, you know, back, you know, think back, way back to not just when the first Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, but also the first Neanderthals. Like, let's you know, go back 500,000 years. These were territories that were rich in food and water and good shelter, and they just have continued to be, even as, you know, the ice ages retreated and more and more land was available to inhabit. These are just incredibly habitable and rich places. And so we have this long human history of wandering across this territory, and archaeologists call that range from southwestern France into northern Spain, the Franco-Cantabrian region or zone, because there's such a high concentration of early human remains and stone tools and caves, especially painted caves, but also earlier, before there were painted caves, just occupied caves, you know, with stone tools and human remains. The Camino, right before you get to Burgos, also has the oldest site of human remains in all of Europe, at Atapuerca. And humanity has been there since 1.2 million years. So there is something really, really old there, and older than almost any other geography that has a human history and prehistory connected to it. So I think that's a part of it. And it's just because it continued to be this rich geography from prehistory through to the Iron Ages and the Roman occupation, and then into the early medieval and then early modern era. It just continues to be this really, really rich and diverse and compelling landscape, and people kept traversing it. And there are a lot of rich, diverse cultures, but I think the evolution of the arrival of the Camino and this sacred medieval Christian trail was layering on that precedent of already well-known holy sites.
Yes.
And so I think that is really a big part of its original power and draw. It's like, how many other places claim that call themselves pilgrim trails, and how many pilgrim trails actually still exist? I mean, most other pilgrimage sites today, people now are flying to, or taking a bus to, or a train to. They're not walking to it. And that's another thing that makes the Camino de Santiago stand out as an experience on its own.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things I really admired about this walk, well, first off, I want to go back and say, if someone were to say to you, look, I've got a month and a half to walk, which route should I walk first? Because there are many routes into Santiago.
Yes.
Right? Would you lean towards walk the Frances first?
I would first start by saying you should really poke around and look at all of them and see which one calls to you.
Okay.
And then I would probably say, but.
But.
Yeah, there's something about the Camino Frances that is a bit more charged and concentrated than the other routes. And the other routes are magnificent, but because it's the most historic and the most walked route, both past and present, it has this dynamic of not just taking a long walk in nature and through amazing historical and cultural sites and communities, but it also has this social dimension with pilgrims, this kind of charged community of pilgrims that I find more intense and engaged on the Camino Frances than any of the other routes, if anything, for just the fact that it is the most walked. So you're going to meet more people, but it's also the route that gets the most people from all over the world on it. So it's the route where, when they say, 191 nations, people from 191 nations last year walked, or in 2019 walked the Camino, they're mostly referring to the Camino Frances, because most people are coming to that route to walk it. And so it's just like, walking United Nations. And you can have that on a smaller scale on the Camino del Norte, or the Via Podiensis, or the Via de la Plata, or the Portuguese routes, but nothing quite at the intensity that you're going to have it on the Frances.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I was going to add that I really admired your slow walking, like not as in your pace necessarily, but how you took your time, and this very intentional way of walking. And I wondered if you could offer some advice, because I find myself, when I'm walking a pilgrimage, that pilgrimage gives you a framework from A to B. You sleep in one place, tomorrow that you're more than likely going to this other certain place. And I find myself, even though I don't want to, kind of hurrying, like, oh, do I want to take the time to take that alternate route? And you had one point in the book, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but you kind of walk up maybe to like a plateau, and you like spend hours in this place, and you're just kind of out in the weather. And I'm like, I want to be more like Beebe the next time I walk. And so I'm wondering if you could offer some advice for those of us who maybe get caught up in that, not even rushing to get to bed, but just that pull to get to where we're going that night. How do you pull yourself away from that and trust that you can walk all day and get there later than maybe everyone else that's been walking that stage?
That it's been such a process. I'm so glad you asked, because the first time I did the full through trek of the Camino Frances, I did exactly that. That's why I kind of said, I have to go back. I have to, because I didn't take enough time here and there. And now I know that you really need to spend more time. Ionate, that magnificent round church with the round cloister around it. And so I made that what I call a mistake. Now, some people, that's not a mistake. That's the way they do want to walk it. So I need to, but that's maybe the key is, we keep saying, walk your own Camino, walk your own walk. That really is so key to this, because for some people, that is what they do want to do. And that's great. But vast majority of people I've heard say, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't take the time, or I felt so worried about the bed situation to find a bed that I regret I didn't slow down. And I think, well, that may be a part of also walk your own walk too, in saying, as much as I really want to keep up with this group of beautiful people I've met, and I'm calling my Camino family, it's actually starting to impose a different kind of pressure, one that's making me keep up instead of slowing down, where I'm called to slow down. And in that, embedded in that idea of walk your own Camino, is this sense of trust and the Camino keeps teaching us that we should really trust it, that it is going to meet all our needs. I mean, even in the worst situations where I was sure I was not going to get a bed, I got a bed, and in a way that I couldn't even expected. Like Zubiri, I wound up in Zubiri. And I had taken my sweet time, just like, I'm now known by the hospitaleros on the Camino Frances. If I call ahead and say, oh, I'm coming, and they're like, just so you know, get here by 7 if you want dinner. And they're like, they know me. They know I'm stopping and photographing. I'm stopping and talking to locals. So now I'm like the extreme opposite. And so that's the way I do it. But anyway, back to this sense of trusting, that really, it's a great opportunity to cultivate the practice of trusting that your needs will be met. And to every time the pressure of, oh, are there going to be enough beds? And I want to sleep there, instead of letting it grip you and just say, well, I really feel like I need to take more time, either to rest, take my shoes and socks off, let the socks dry, take care of my feet, or go and spend a half hour at Castro Mayor, that Iron Age hilltop Castro, where I stayed so long I got sunburned, and then got late to the where I was staying, but I didn't even know I was going to sleep that night, and just saying, let me just trust. And part of trusting is asking for help. It's a big part of it, is like, I'm not going to worry about the bed thing, but if I find that I get where I'm going and everything's full, to ask the hospitalero or the hostal owner, do you know of anyone, maybe a kilometer north or a kilometer south, who has an inn that I can stay in? Or do you know of anyone in the village up ahead? Can you call for me and say, I'm coming, and they have a bed? That's a way of exercising trusting the Camino too, is asking for help and just knowing it will happen. I mean, and sometimes gloriously so. Like when I was in Zubiri and I couldn't find anything, and it was late, and I was starting to think I might actually have to call a cab, and go to Pamplona and then come back and pick up from there. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. And right as I was,
that big,
yeah, exactly. And then I was thinking, and I knew that the village up ahead was already booked full, and it was like I could just be walking all night. And so I finally went to the municipal albergue in Zubiri, and I said, can you call a cab for me? I was just feeling so ashamed. And I hope nobody overheard this. And well, the cab actually came, and he said, he came very quickly, and I was amazed. And he said, oh, no, these 5 nurses from, I think they were from Barcelona, have already called me, and they've booked a place that's past the next village, and they have another place there. So I just piled into the cab with the nurses, and the nurses were like insisting on paying for my cab too. And when we got to the inn, they made sure I had a room, a bed. And I just thought, well, this is far better than, sleeping, on some dank floor in the municipal albergue in Zubiri, even though all those spaces had been taken up too. And it was such a better ending to the day. but I had to release myself into that possibility.
And I guess what a great learning experience, because you spent all that time, taking in that space, and then you rewarded, you got a great place to stay. And that must be building your confidence that, oh, next time that comes up and I want to spend a little more time there, I can trust. So I hope that.
And it is a constant process. It is a constant process, because I have to keep reminding myself that look at what the Camino gave you. It's amazing, but you do have to trust and ask for help.
And ask for help and take the help when it's offered.
Exactly. Even if it's a 5-kilometer cab ride, or a 7-kilometer cab ride.
So the first time that I walked, I feel like I missed so much. I think I was in a state of heartbreak and probably crying too much to really take note of the presence of Mary. And as I read, and I think I even embarrassed myself at one point on a call with you, being like, where was Mary? I feel like when I go to Italy, I see her everywhere. And you're like, she's there everywhere. What's wrong? Why did you not see her? And
it just wasn't your Camino at that time.
No, it was not. And as I was reading this book, I was like, this next Camino I did just recently, Mary was right. And I was like, there's what Beebe was saying, right? And this is before I read your book, right? So this was after that call in between. Cool. And, Mary was everywhere, and I, of course, was using your guidebook, and I was seeing every Mary I could, if it wasn't obvious. And so I wanted to talk about, your new book really brings out the essence of the divine feminine. And you talk about so many things. And you mentioned earlier, well, I'll say this quote of part of your book. You say, while signs for St. James were evident and in the open, those for the goose goddess were hidden even in plain sight. So you talk about that. You talk about the old goddess still being present in the new church. You talk about the migration of symbols and how new churches were built over former sacred spaces. So there's so much here we could talk about. So I don't even know where to start, but to say that you really do bring out the essence of Mary in this book and the divine feminine. So you touched on earlier about Mother Goose, and I have never made that connection until I read that. So I guess let's start there, and then maybe you can just talk for a few minutes about, what stands out to you about the presence of Mary, and maybe your favorite statue and your favorite story.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about the presence of Mary on the Camino and the roots in southern France, as well, across France and in Spain, is that all these churches, there's Santa Maria de Eunate, Santa Maria de Estea, Santa Maria de Leboreiro, all these, churches devoted to Mary are, if you look at their origin stories, there's something rooted in nature, a force of nature, a holy experience in nature. Whether that image of Mary was discovered in a cave like Nájera, and now that cave is a part of the church that they built in her honor, or the Mary of Le Puy in Estea, she was found by shepherds on the hilltop. So this was, a cave, a hilltop. The Mary found in the Ebro River near Logroño is now in the Iglesia del Palacio. So there's a river Mary, there's a hilltop Mary, there's a cave Mary, there's in Leboreiro, Mary miraculously appears in a spring. And up until the 60s, villagers still said they could still see her image in sitting by the spring combing her hair. And that was when I started that story, especially. I thought, okay, wait a minute, that's an old folk story from the north of Spain about these nature spirits who were now called fairies, but were once called goddesses. Mm-hmm. And almost all of them, one of their signature traits is they're sitting by a cave opening or a running stream or a stream source, combing their hair. And to the modern mind, that sounds like, oh, that's, she's combing her hair, like she's really concerned about her looks. It's like, that's modern surface thinking. Right. What the comb is, such an ancient symbol. It's one of the earliest tools that we made that is not just for combing our hair, but it's for for the weaving process, the comb in weaving, and to create cloth is a very powerful thing. And if you think of all our ancient mythology, there's this magical quality to the person who knows how to weave, and there's a magical quality to certain cloth. And when you really think about it, the ability to move from just wearing animal hides to weaving cloth was a game changer for humanity as far as warmth, comfort, but then having luxury goods to trade. So weavers are huge as far as possessing, superpowers, or magical qualities. And so that comb in her hand of what was once an old goddess of Europe was not signifying vanity. It was signifying the power to weave and make the world, and the power to draw this comb, her presence, her awareness through her creation. It's really a Mother Earth story of the Mother Goddess making sure all is well and in order. So it's like she's overseeing, she's shepherding her creation by combing it, keeping it in order. So that's a very powerful old story. It's really prevalent in northern Spain. It's as far as survivals, but it shows up in pockets in other parts of Europe. And that's when I sort of said, okay, this Laborero Mary, that stream that water source they found her, those are villagers remembering an older divinity that now they're calling Mary. And then they built a church in her honor. And then they put her image in that church. And as the story goes, she kept going to the stream at night. And villagers were like, how do we keep her in the church? And it was a stonemason who said, why don't we engrave her image on the tympanum at the entrance of the church to let everyone know this is who we're honoring here? And when they did that, her image that they found in the source, they stayed on the altar. And that's another powerful thing of saying the old consciousness, the old divinity is still being honored here, even though we're now calling it a Christian church. And it was a way of finding a harmony between the old sacred system and the new sacred system, and saying we're still going to honor this divinity because we still need her for the health of the earth. And so all these stories, all these chapels have these kinds of stories. In Ponferrada, the La Encina, the Church of La Encina, the Basilica, well, the Templar Knight found that image of Mary in the trunk of an oak tree, and it's just like, so another nature discovery. And it just kept happening. And all these Marys are associated with all these natural sites that were holy before the church was built there, but remained holy. And it created a continuity and also a way of the new faith to gain legitimacy with the native and local populations.
That is so fascinating.
And it really is.
It just can't be by accident of how they're found.
It can't be. It can't be. It's a way of the old to continue to survive and exist. And that's what Mother Goose is. Because so many of these divinities are associated with water. They have hybrid animal features, the most prominent being duck and goose feet. So, which is why I sometimes said, I just wanted to lift the skirt on the Mary and see if she has webbed feet, because there are some images of Marys with webbed feet in France that have since been destroyed, unfortunately. It's amazing how prevalent and it is. It's almost amazing that it really is hiding in plain sight. And once you start realizing that, okay, Mother Goose is an evolution out of this, a way of the old matriarchy to survive with the growing more and more dominant patriarchy that is really stamping out any female power,
right?
Whether in the profane or in the sacred. And so we get Mother Goose, who seems very innocuous. She's not going to threaten anyone. You're going to sit at her feet and listen to her stories. And what are her stories but earth wisdom tales? And it's a way of reminding us we have severed ourselves from the earth, and now we're all upward thinking, looking up there, like that's where our salvation is, when we'll save ourselves if we reconnect to the earth and take care of it. Yes. And that's maybe the root, the urgency of this, not just my book, but why this keeps coming up. I think there's something about, we've lost our balance, and everything that is screaming for balance is really getting more vocal, including these symbols and pilgrims walking this path looking for goose signs. So it's the real message that it's the earth saying we need to come back to rooting ourselves in the earth. This is holy, and this is sustaining, and this is our salvation.
Yeah, and we need to take better care of her.
We sure do.
And you talk about the balance too of masculine and femininity, you know, they're always finding that balance. And when I was reading through this book that your newest book, and you tell some stories about Eunati and also Sepulcro and Torre del Rio, I think, right? And so, okay.
Yeah. Like you're thinking of the caretaker in Torre del Rio? Whoa.
Whoa. Right. I mean, I think going to those two sacred sites, those two churches, the energy is a Camino within a Camino. And when you're describing that walk around the outside of Eunati, and then when you go inside and you feel that energy, I felt a palpable energy in there that I could not even explain.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience in there, and then I want to go to the caretaker and what happens there. But yeah, you know, what is your experience in Eunati? Like there's just something there.
There really is. I mean, the first time I went, for one thing, you know, now it's a detour. It used to be on the medieval trail, and I really urge anyone, do not skip that detour. It adds 2.5 kilometers to your walk. You're going to be so glad you did that, because many people, including in, you know, many of the tourist offices in Nevada, really believe, you know, not just pilgrims, but people who are in the profession of drawing people to the region. They say this may be the highlight of the whole Camino, and it's just like, and I have to say, yes, it is definitely in the top 3. Yeah. So the first time I went there, you know, and I was like, do not miss the detour, go, you know, and I just knew there was something special about it because it's enigmatic. It is a octagonal church surrounded by 33 arches that are called a cloister, and they take on the appearance of a cloister, but most cloisters are set off to the one side of a church, and they're usually square, and they have a garden in the center. So here, instead of a garden in the center, and instead of being square, the cloister arches are around the church. And I didn't think about this until many, many years later, and several other visits to Eunate, that you know, the church itself is the garden. And Mary's medieval name, one of her medieval names, was Hortus Conclusus, or Hortus Conclusus. I don't know how my Latin is pronounced well, but it means the interior garden, the hidden garden. You know, that place where that is unblemished. And so, and there was just so much more, because so many people say, why 33 arches when the Basque name Eunate means 100 doors? So that's the other thing that kind of, I was really curious about in my first visit there, because I was like, all right, 33, I know. You know, this is the number of beads on a prayer beads for Sufis who are meditating on the 99 names of God. They pray three circuits around the prayer beads, and then there's a central bead that's at the joint where there's then hanging some, you know, medallions or talismans, and that is like the 100th door. That's when, after you've meditated on the 99 names of God, you are ready to enter through the doorway and seek union or understanding or communion with the divine. But you have to first meditate on all the divine's qualities and really meditate on them, embody them. So I thought this might be something like that, because the stonemasons who built these medieval churches were coming from all kinds of backgrounds. And we know that Jews, Christians, and Muslims were living in a lot of co-creative convivencia, as they call it in Spain. in not just in the south, but even in the north. Even though there was this polemic between north and south and Christian and Islamic halves of Iberia, it was still far more mingled and far more collaborative, creative acts going on than war and fighting. So Eunate probably is taking not only Islamic mystical ideas and Christian mystical ideas, but also Jewish mystical ideas, because there's also the 8-sided, the octagon, there's the 33 arches. There's, if you go into Hebrew gematria, I'm again not sure about the correct pronunciation, which is assigning numbers to letters. Then the name of Jesus in Hebrew, Yeshua, comes out to be 888. You know, so it's 3 8. So again, you have 3 suggesting 3 circuits. Maybe you have 3 8s. 8 is important. It's the doors of. It represents resurrection in Christianity. It represents the doorways to heaven in Islam. So it's just, everything was suggesting, go around this thing 3 times. Yeah. Walk in that 100th door, which is the door facing you. Then you write lines with the nave, and there's Mary, Hortus Conclusus. You know, and I can't imagine any greater union with the divine than that 100th door. Of course, I was puzzling all this out, but my experience of the first visit to Eunate was just, there's something very cool going on here. I don't know what it means yet, but I just really want to sit and experience it. And I could feel its pull, and I could feel it's in a really gorgeous landscape of rolling hills, and it's just tucked in this perfect nook, and there's sheep grazing around on the hillsides around it. It's just, you knew there's really a strong feng shui there. Yeah. But it just so happened my very first visit to Eunate, as I was just so excited about getting there, that at the very last minute, I ran into another pilgrim who I had been running into since Pamplona, and she was really chatty. And she was talking. So, and I had not yet learned that you need to say, I need to not talk right now. You know, I was still learning that whole pilgrim etiquette thing. And so when I finally got to sit inside the chapel, I could feel something, but I was also entertaining somebody who was also talking. And at one point I finally said, could we just take a moment and just see listen to the church? And she did give me a moment. And in that moment, I felt just this rush of glorious, beautiful, pure, refreshing energy. And I vowed that I would go back there, Of course, in hindsight, I vowed that I would go back. I wanted to go back there, but in hindsight, I vowed that I would go back there and lay down boundaries if I needed to, but I've never had to since. You know, it's like there's something about Eunate for most people that they just go quiet. Even the most talkative people, they just go quiet because it's so beautiful to just be there.
Yeah, it was one of my most glorious, the most glorious day of my last walk. And I actually walked with another pilgrim to it, and we arrived about 2 hours early before it was open, before the caretaker came. And I had to say, the stamp from that caretaker was one of the most intense spiritual moments. And she really didn't do anything that differently. It was the energy around the way she stamped and the way she handed back our credencial. And we did yoga in the yard before.
That's so cool.
By the time the church opened, we were in such a great space, and the energy. But I want to cut into, like, next you go eventually, I think another day or so, you end up at the masculine end of another church built around the same kind of thing. And this caretaker, sit down and listen, and then makes you sing by yourself.
She was an army sergeant. Oh my God. And she was, she, to go back to that idea of the caretakers and that powerful moment of getting your stamp at Eunate, that's the thing about locals that also made me really pay attention, that this goose quest, this seeking these deeper layers, is very real, because the locals keep talking about energy and the potency of these places and the energy of these places. I mean, in Obanos, an elderly man sitting at his front stoop, as I was walking in reverse to go back to Eunate the last time I was there, most recently, he said, "Oh, that's really good. It has very special energy." And I just kept hearing locals talk about energy. And I thought, okay, I need to take this seriously and not feel so timid about also saying, I'm feeling energy. So anyway, but the real initiatory moment was going into the chapel in Torres del Rio, the Holy Sepulchre Church, which is octagonal, much taller too, in its octagon. And it's almost just a freestanding octagon. And the caretaker was there. She had just opened the doors that morning. And she was really, really upset with most of the pilgrims, because they were just rushing past, and they might have ducked their head in and taken a quick picture. And it was very clear that you have to give €1 as a donation to come in here and visit the church, including to take a photo. So by the time I stepped in, and I already had my euro out so she wouldn't bark at me, and said, and I'd like a stamp, and I'd like to visit the church. And she said, "You sit, I have things to tell you." And I was like, okay, I made a vow, I'm going to listen, so and I also wanted to hear what she had to say, but she was very intimidating. I hope there's a saw outside. I hope it's not interfering in the sound.
I can't hear it, no.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Might have to cut this out. But so I sat down, and first of all, she started putting me to work. She's like, "Oh, you can translate for all the English speakers, and tell them, they need to pay €1, they need to take time. This is a very special church. Here's its history." And then she started saying, "And you need to know, this is a very powerful place." And then she just started telling me, she was giving me numbers of how many hundreds of circuits of energy were running up each of the 8 pillars that formed the octagon, and how they joined at the center and concentrated all that energy and shot up into the sky like, a magnificent stupa, connecting heaven and earth.
Right.
And and then she just really started ragging on the local politicians, who she's like, they don't even, they think I'm talking, bonkers stuff, but what do you expect from a politician? They don't feel anything, And I was just, but then she started saying, this is a power vortex here, and Eunate is a power vortex, but Eunate is feminine and Torres del Rio is masculine. And they're like a yin yang. And actually, if you actually put a yin yang over a map with, the masculine end dot, on Torres del Rio, and the feminine one on Eunate, you'll find that where they meet in the middle is Estella. And that's where I started realizing you have almost like this kind of a masculine, feminine circuit going, and Eunate is the place of balance where the male and the female meet. And it was just like all this sort of stuff was just going on as she was telling me, and she was saying, yeah, there's this whole circuit. It's a closed circuit flowing through the earth, and Eunate Torres del Rio with Estella, boom. There in the middle. That was one of many, but probably one of the most powerful times a local really wanted me to know this road is full of energy, and these places are places of high energy, and the locals know it, and they're the caretakers of it. It's caretaker in a bigger sense than just, manning the door and stamping pilgrim credentials.
There's just some energy. I feel like some divine intervention there that she doesn't know what you're doing. She didn't know the special quest you were on.
Exactly. I didn't ask her.
Aside, right?
Yeah. She just said, I have things to tell you, and sit. And then she was also talking about the importance of balance, that the feminine divine is important, the masculine divine is important. They should be in balance. And she even added that as the caretaker of Torres del Rio, she said, I tried to visit Eunate, but when I tried to enter, I just felt this electric, like she knew she was going to be shocked like and get an electric shock. So she said, I realized that I am the guardian of this shrine, and I need to maintain its energy, but that we need to balance. We need a balance. And then she had me sing, she's like, you really need to experience the power of this place. And I'm like, I'm not a singer. And she's like, sing. There's no saying no to this woman. And what happened when I started singing was I had a beautiful voice. I mean, I don't know where it came from, but there was an energy that just came through my feet and up through my body and just expanded my diaphragm. And I was singing in a way I'd never experienced before. So I suggest everyone go pay your euro, take your time, let the caretaker have her way with you, because she's very appropriate in the end. And she has a lot to share. And sing, like go with, some sacred song and listen to your voice go from mortal to angelic. It is really something.
Oh, that's beautiful, Beebe. And I'm going to say too, like pay that euro, because so many churches, the towns can't keep them open, and so we're so fortunate when a place of that sacredness has someone there and can educate us about the space. And we need to keep these things going, or they're just going to be locked and only be able to read about them. And of course, I love reading about them, but there's something about being able to step into them and experience it as well.
As they were intended. Yeah.
Well, Beebe, there's so many things I still want to touch on. We only have a few more minutes left. I wanted to mention Miles and some things that you mentioned about Miles. And I was like, wow, that is a benchmark of a relationship, I think, something that I would aspire for in my next relationship. And what I'm talking about is when you're at a party and you mention that someone asks him, you okay with her taking off all the time and going writing these guidebooks and doing these pilgrimages? And he says, better stories find her when she travels alone. And I just thought that was so beautifully supportive. And just recently I was on a tour here in Santiago and met two pilgrims, two guys. And I said, oh, you planning your next one? And they said, this was just last week. And they said, no, our wives aren't going to be okay with us being gone. And my mind went immediately to what Miles said to you. And so I just wanted to put a shout out to that and say how beautiful it is. And you talk about how each time it was harder to go, but you knew that you had this thing, but you had his full support. So he must have been so proud of you as you published this 7th book.
Thank you. He is, and he's very much a part of it. He's always believed in me. And, we're both very similar. We met in graduate school, and we both were already, on this path of going abroad to do field work and research and writing. And, he had different territories that he would go to and I would go to. And sometimes we shared them. Like he loves France and Spain as well. And he's been on some of these treks with me. And in some ways early on, really encouraged me to go off on my own for my own self-empowerment, and understood how important that was. And then when I turned it into my work, it became even more important to him. Like he really is surprised, but this is how you're still living in a patriarchy. When many people will ask your husband if he's okay with you going away, but no one asks you if you're okay with him going away. Or many people would say, well, is Miles going to join you? But nobody ever asked me if I'm going to join him on his research work travel. So it's like, it is phenomenal and an incredible blessing to have such a partner, because I know it is, every partnership is seeking to strike a balance between the we and the me and you aspects of it. And it's really essential that all three pieces are healthy. It's like Eunate Estea en Torres del Rio. It has to be a balance, keep the circuits flowing, but all three are essential.
Yeah, and I didn't think, Beebe, you are such an inspiration, I think, to the women out there that are traveling solo. And I mean, you are so independent. And it's beautiful.
Great to hear.
Yeah, but you're still in this beautiful interdependent relationship. And I think that also is a role model for we women to observe and to learn to do, because so many of us put aside, you know, as caretakers or whatever, and are afraid to go away from the family and pursue our own pursuits. And you are showing a beautiful balance of that. So thank you for doing that for our Camino community, because I think that's very important to role model. I wanted to bring up too, probably, I guess, one of our last questions. I don't want it to be.
Me neither.
So a yoga teacher, me, was all over when you did your first walk. You're talking about, I think your friend's name is Rosalind, and she talks about you guys are doing that first pilgrimage, and she's doing this chakra pilgrimage, right? And then a little bit later, so you talk about it a little bit later in the book, and you talk about, and I've never heard anyone else talk about the Kundalini energy of the possibility of that running through the Camino. And it just really made piqued my interest, and also made me think about my next Camino and trying those in. So I just wanted to hit on that and give you a chance to kind of talk about that and what that was like, because I think you mentioned that you were walking with her on her, I think it was the second chakra when you did that walk with her, and then she said something to you like, oh, you know, something's gonna happen to you here. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, she's a spiritual teacher, so she of course was going to point out where I was resisting, you know, which I trusted her to do that, though I knew I was resisting. But yeah, Sarah, her name is Sarah, and she was actually, her intention, I think still is, but it's a big project, to walk all the way to Roslyn in Scotland.
Oh, she's walking to Roslyn, but it's Sarah. Okay, sorry.
Right, which would be in her reckoning the seventh, arriving at the seventh chakra, and she saw the Camino in reverse, that you start in Finnis Terre and you walk in reverse to the Pyrenees, and then up through France, and then up through England, and then into Scotland. And she knew I wanted to go back and walk a route of the Camino, and most likely one of the French routes. And that I was starting to really get into this whole symbolism of the goose and the duck, and trying to trace it in the churches and in the different regions. So she said, you know, I'm going to be walking this reverse route. I've already done the first chakra, as she said, you know, from Finistère to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Now I want to do the second chakra, which was to go on the Arles route from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Toulouse. And actually it wasn't the Arles route. The Arles route starts in Oloron-Sainte-Marie, a little bit further east of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It's another mountain pass town. But there's a bridging route, the Piedmont route, that will connect Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Oloron, and then from there to Toulouse, if you're walking it in reverse, which was what we were going to do. And she wanted to do it, and I was like, you know, forward, backward, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to look for the goose and the duck, you know.
Right.
So, but you know, it was really, really a great education for me to think about what she was saying about, what do you mean by the second chakra? And then I was thinking, oh, the second chakra is about relationships, and I'm your picked partner for this trek. So, this is going to be intense, you know, probably if there's anything really going on here, which there was. And because, as I said, she's a spiritual teacher, and so she was like a mirror for me. Anything that came up, she saw it, and we discussed it. You know, it was like, wow, this is really a second chakra journey. but that really woke me up to this idea that places, and I'd heard this in the Dordogne too, locals speak about places with energy that will trigger certain chakra points. So I was already kind of getting familiar with this idea in the local lore that a particular, like there's one church in the Dordogne, it's a really tiny chapel that everyone just says, you go there and it'll open your throat chakra. And I was like, so, and you feel like this sudden expansion and opening, and you don't feel like going anymore, you know. And I was just like, well, that's really interesting. So when I then got back to walking the Camino Frances, and I was walking in the direction that everyone's familiar with, going west, I was thinking about this idea of certain places opening certain chakras, or, you know, really triggering that energy and expanding it. And then it was when I was in Azqueta after Estella, the Hospitalera and the albergue there, she has all these paintings on her albergue wall of very Australian Aboriginal style serpents, and just exquisite. And I just said, what is going on there? And she said, oh, the Camino is a kundalini. It's this big serpent. And as you walk it, it awakens your energy centers. And that's just, again, a local talking about energy on an incredible scale. And that's very real. You can experience it. It's very interesting to go into a church and just be quiet and breathe and surround yourself with light, do all those good meditation techniques, and then see what you experience, what comes. Do you feel something waking up inside you? Do you receive a vision, an impression? These are places that intentionally by humans, pre-Christian and Christian, were layered on in that particular spot because people felt there was something powerful going on there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there has to be. Look at the pull for us to walk in the first place, how we all find out how we're on to walk. It may take a few years, but we end up walking, and then we want to walk again and again and again. Yeah. I want to end this. One of my favorite quotes about the Camino, we've all heard this one, that the Camino doesn't end when we get to Santiago, it just begins. And you had another one that added to it, and now I need to find it, and it's not in my right note. Here it is. So you added to it, and now this will be my new favorite. It ends at the beginning and begins at the end. It is all about the journey in between. It turns out, and now it starts anew. And I just found that so beautiful. Beebe, this book is a gift for all that have walked the Camino and for all that want to walk it. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the entire community for writing this beautiful book. And I'm hoping you have an 8th book, maybe a 9th book. I don't know. Do you?
I do. I have a couple books in the works that they're both still too early to talk too much about, but one is another travel narrative, and that of course is going to be back in southwestern France and northern Spain. And the other is a work of magical realism, a novel that it's the first attempt at fiction. So that one I'm really not going to talk about until it really gels, but I'm having a good time with both of them, and they both definitely involve the Camino.
So you have a travel narrative down, so there's no doubt in my mind that you can write any style that you want.
Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone that has been watching and listening that if you want to have the wonderful opportunity of spending time with Beebe and working on the writing skills and all the things that she's going to be doing here at this retreat. That is June 5th through June 12th. I will have the link in the show notes. We will also have a link for her newest book and all of her other wonderful books. So Beebe, if you'll stay on, we'll say goodbye. But I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the Camino community, the Camino Cafe podcast. We're just thrilled to know you and be able to spend time with you. And thank you for educating us and entertaining us and just making us better pilgrims and enhancing our pilgrim experience.
So thank you. Thank you, Lee, and thank you to the Camino Pilgrim community and the Camino Cafe. That's
my pleasure.
Really an honor to be here.
All right. Well, bon Camino, everyone. See you next time.
Free as a bird now, with my feathered wings. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathered wings.